Hello again, everyone. I hope you are doing well. So, we are now going on with designing significant learning experiences, and we are on to step number 5. So, some sample problems that can be detected and changed at the integration stage include: are there presumptions of student knowledge or attitude that are not valid? Is the structure of the course consistent with your beliefs and values about teaching? Are there any conflicts between student goals and the teacher goals? If there are problems of inconsistency at this time, something needs to be changed. So just to highlight here, we are now at number 5, make sure the primary components are integrated. So what is integrating the 3 components? The other part of the integration process involves 3 components: the learning goals, the teaching and learning activities, and the feedback and assessment procedures. They all need to support each other. The best way to ensure integration of the components is to use the 3-column table that is in Exhibit 4.4. So here is Exhibit 4.4, and we'll refer back to it. What you want to do first is write in all the primary learning goals for your course. If possible, include one of each kind of significant learning. In the first column, listed there, the general version of 6 kinds of significant learning to show what might that look like in a real-world situation. You then would translate these general statements into specifics for your particular course. Second, for each goal, identify the assessment procedures that will tell you whether students have achieved that kind of learning. For some learning, these may be the familiar paper and pencil tests. For other kinds of learning, you'll probably need to find new and more innovative forms of assessment. Third, for each goal, identify specifically what students will need to do to achieve that kind of learning. So what is appropriate, the type of activities that they should be doing. Some of these activities may be out-of-class reading, reflective writing, or homework. In-class activities may be case studies, role-playing, whole class discussions, small group problem solving, or things like that. Now, you might wonder how many people do this. Well, again, as I've said throughout the class, this information is kind of directed at the undergraduate professor. And what's important to appreciate in the big context of things is universities have, every 10 years or so, regional accreditation. And there is a process of doing kind of self-assessment. Are you meeting program goals? Because, what is the value of a bachelor's degree? So what is that product? Regional accreditors, they want to know that learning is occurring. Also, people who have vested interests in the university want to know that learning is occurring. So those might be different stakeholders, donors, people who have clinical internships to get workers, etc., etc. So this is all kind of part of that process. Now, for you as potential teachers in an occupational therapy program, it's similar to physical therapy where we have accreditation bodies. And so we kind of do this in a different way. Now, some teachers may be very specific in doing this. Others may do it as part of the accreditation process where they match things from their course syllabus with minimum criteria that the accreditation body requires. I've also recently done this. There's a group called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and they have an academic pathway for students to be able to get credit for coursework that they do. And reduce then their requirements to be able to take professional certification. And so I had to do something kind of similar to this, where it wasn't exactly like this particular model that the textbook authors created, but it's where you're linking goals in the course, you're matching them with learning objectives that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, what they want to see, and you're demonstrating then the ways that learning has been demonstrated. Now, if you were to utilize this strategy as you fill in the 3-column table, you'll discover very important principle of integrated course design. You need different kinds of assessment and learning activities for different kinds of learning. An important benefit of using the 3-column table is that it helps the course designer avoid the easy trap of giving lip service to important learning goals, but then going about teaching in a way that does not really support those learning goals. Once teachers have designed strong primary components for the course and checked these components to be sure they reflect and support each other, they are ready to connect these activities in a way that allows the activities to build on and support each other. So a major benefit of the model of integrated course design is that it provides specific criteria for assessing the quality of course design. So we can kind of see this now here in figure 4.4. This illustrates the primary components of assessment. These criteria indicate that the initial phase of course design is good if it includes the following elements. So there is an in-depth analysis of situational factors. It is based on systematic review that has identified all the major situational constraints and opportunities for the course. There is significant learning goals. It includes learning goals focused on several kinds of significant learning, not just the understand and remember variety. Educative feedback and assessment. It includes the components of educative assessment, forward-looking assessment, opportunities for students to engage in self-assessment, clear criteria and standards, and fidelity feedback. These allow the feedback and assessment to go beyond auditive assessment. Active teaching and learning activities. It includes learning activities that engage students in active learning by incorporating powerful forms of experiential and reflective learning, as well as ways of getting basic information and ideas. Integration and alignment. All the major components of the course are integrated. That is, situational factors, learning goals, feedback, assessment, and teaching and learning activities are all aligned so that they support each other. If the course design rates high on each of those 5 criteria, then a good course design is in place. Once you have strong primary components for your course, you need to assemble those components into a powerful dynamic whole. The 2 key steps in this process are creating a course structure and selecting effective instructional strategy. Then these 2 items have to be merged into an overall scheme of learning activities. You have the option of creating either the course structure first or the instructional strategy first. Fink suggests starting with the course structure first, simply because most people find that easier to do. So now we are at this point here, number 6, create a thematic structure for the course. So to create a thematic course structure, one needs to look at the whole subject of the course and identify the most important concepts, issues, topics, and themes, usually around 4, but no more than 7. These topics need to be arranged in some kind of sequence. They can be arranged chronologically, from simple to complex, from fundamental topics to ones that emerge from fundamentals, or possibly in some other pattern. The goal is to sequence the topics so that they build on one another in a way that allows students to integrate each new idea, topic, or theme with the preceding ones as the course proceeds. Creating a good structure also enables the teacher to identify problems or assignments for students to work on that gradually become more complex and challenging. So in figure 4.5 here, This shows the course structure for a hypothetical course for each new topic. Students need an introduction to that topic that is represented by the white box, and then opportunities to apply and use the concepts and ideas in assignments. Those are the shaded parts of the columns. And there's some examples in the textbook if you're interested in reviewing those. Some of those have, again, basis in undergraduate coursework. Now, moving on to the next section, we're looking at step 7, select or create a teaching strategy. In the initial phase of the design process, teachers identify specific learning activities that will be effective enough to accomplish significant learning goals. What needs to be done now is to arrange these individual learning activities into an effective teaching strategy. This is very important. It requires a clear understanding and a distinction between teaching technique and teaching strategy. Teaching technique is a specific activity, such as lecturing. That is a technique. Leading a class is a technique. Having people do lab work, assigning essays, those are techniques. A teaching strategy is a particular combination of learning activities arranged in a particular sequence. The goal is to find a combination and sequence of learning activities that work together synergistically and build a high level of student energy that can be applied to the task of learning. To illustrate a difference between techniques and strategies, looking at something developed by an education leader, Barbara Valverde, she postulates that all teachers face two common tasks. Teachers want and need their students to master the content of a course and learn how to use that content in some way. In a general sense, the first task, introducing students to the content, is primarily valuable as a means to a more important end. The second task, learning how to use that content and identifying its value and significance. What tools do teachers have to accomplish these tasks? They have a variety of different learning activities called teaching techniques that can be sorted into in-class activities and out-of-class activities, and those are illustrated here in figure 4.6. So you can read through those and see some of those examples there of the in-class and out-of-class related activities. A potential problem identified by Valverde is that most of us end up with very little time for the second task. That happens because we spend too much class time trying to accomplish the first task, covering content. So we have very little time left for helping students learn how to use that content, that being the second task. What is the solution to the problem? Finding some way to move that initial learning of the content to out-of-class activities, leaving more in-class time for learning how to use it. This is something that we struggle with, and it's something we're struggling with these new, younger learners. Maybe when you went to school, when I went to school, there was outside of class expectations. And these days, sometimes it's difficult to get the students to do those outside of class things. Read a case to be able to discuss about it on Monday. Listen to an additional lecture. Sometimes they have a hard time doing that, or they have a hard time finding that balance. There's so many things pulling at their attention. One strategy people used is a flipped classroom. But this is a dangerous area because if you have people listen to a lecture and then come in to do work in class, do you take up too much of their time by listening to a 2-hour lecture and then having that 4-hour in-class session? Or do you only have a 2-hour in-class session for the lab? It becomes very challenging and you can't overwhelm them. Here's something modified from Valverde. It's a castle-top diagram, a general template for creating a teaching strategy where you have an illustration of in-class and out-of-class activities. So you're thinking about what goes on in a particular class session and what you want them to do outside of that class session. Now, to make the template more concrete, let's look at 3 teaching strategies from literature on college teaching and show how each one fills this template. So first one here, team-based learning. Since the 1990s, many teachers have begun to use small groups in their teaching. They found that this is a relatively easy way to incorporate active learning into their course and that it can make dramatic differences in the quality of learning. However, many teachers use small groups as teaching technique rather than a strategy. In this case, small groups are used as an independent activity inserted here or there into pre-existing stuff and basically unchanged. Team-based learning, however, is a sophisticated version of teaching with small groups that works at the level of a teaching strategy. This teaching strategy uses small groups extensively, but sets up a particular sequence of activities that transforms groups into teams and then uses the extraordinary capabilities of teams to accomplish a high level of content and application learning. So that's what we're viewing now here. In this teaching strategy, students read the related material on their own, then come to class and take a test on that material both individually and as a group. This sequence, called the readiness assurance process, brings nearly all students up to a moderate level of content understanding quickly and effectively. Then the students are able to spend a significant amount of time working in class in small groups, learning how to apply that content through a series of practice application exercises. Eventually, students take a test that measures both their content understanding and their ability to use that content. Then the cycle starts over, focused on the next major topic in the course. By working through this sequence and getting frequent immediate feedback on their performance, the small groups gradually evolve into and become something quite different. They become learning teams. Once these newly formed groups have gelled and become cohesive teams, the members become very committed to the work of their teams, and the teams become capable of accomplishing some very challenging learning tasks. In terms of the holistic model of active learning, as demonstrated here in Figure 4.9, the team-based learning cycle begins with students acquiring information and ideas in readiness assurance process. Then the process gives students a powerful opportunity to gain some kind of doing experience, usually in the form of case problems or in simulations. Reflective dialogue, although not originally included in the team-based learning model, is a relatively easy component to add. In fact, the originator of this approach to teaching has added periodic journals and learning portfolios in his team-based learning courses.